Good morning. Welcome to the United States Sports Academy and our weekly sports talk program. Today we're going to talk a little NBA basketball. And with me to do that is our two resident basketball coaches, Dr. Brett Simmermacher, our chair of sports coaching, and Mr. Ben Billman, one of our graduate teaching assistants. Both have experience coaching basketball. We're going to kind of focus on the Golden State Warriors and their run at a possible record season of 72 wins by the 95-96 Chicago Bulls. But before we get started, do either one of you guys know what happened 54 years ago today?
The only reason I know is because you came into my office earlier and told me, but it had to do with someone named Wilt Chamberlain and something about 100 points. But that's all I remember.
Okay, 100 points.
Why are you guys flipped?
March 2nd, 1962. They played the game in Hershey, Pennsylvania for some reason. I never really found out why they played in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
You were there, right? I was there, and I think
Yeah,
you were
no.
there. Oh, you weren't?
I wasn't born
Okay.
yet.
Will was playing for the Philadelphia Warriors at the time. That was the only game all year they played in Hershey, Pennsylvania. You know, I heard a story on ESPN last week. There are some of those conspiracy theory people that think that game never happened because there's absolutely no video of it. There's one little picture of Will holding up a little piece of paper, and somebody took like an ink pen and wrote 100 on it. And he's holding it up and smiling after the game. But 100 points in a game. And one of the great things about Wilt was he was not a very good free throw shooter. In fact, he was a bad free throw shooter. And that night he went 28 for 32 from the free throw line.
Mysterious.
Yes,
Yeah.
mysterious indeed. But just another one of those things, you know. ESPN, contrary to what ESPN thinks, sports did not start in September of 1979. There was a lot of good sports happened before that, including Wilt Chamberlain scoring 100 points. And as Ben mentioned this morning, Kobe's 81, which is the second greatest performance of all time, was pretty good into itself. Okay, the Golden State Warriors are currently 54-5. Just think about that for a second. 54-5 doesn't even really sound possible, but that's what they are. That's a .915 winning percentage, and if you multiply 82 games by .915, you come out with 75.0 something. So they're currently on a pace to finish the season at 75-7 if they maintain that .915 winning percentage. The Bulls at this point were 53-6, so the Warriors are only one game better than the Bulls. And the Bulls from this point on never lost two games in a row. They won one, lost one, won six, lost one, won six, lost one, won five, lost one, won one. So what do you guys think that? First of all, are you rooting for the Warriors to break the record? And two, do you think they're going to break the record? I'll start with you, Ben.
I'm definitely rooting for the Warriors to break the record. I'm pretty confident they will, barring just a major collapse. And I do think they will. And we'll talk about this a little later, I'm sure. But the last few games of their schedule are very tough, and so it's going to come down to the wire. But I think they're going to get 73 or 74 wins. But those last few games are going to be very dramatic to see if they can do it.
I think it goes to the old saying, records are there to be broken.
Mm-hmm.
Am I necessarily rooting for them? No. It's kind of like the Dolphins fans don't want people to break the Dolphins record and have an undefeated season. There's a lot of those types of records out there. I think they're going to break it. I think these types of special teams only come around so often. You know, people talk about the 96 Bulls. I'm going to talk about a junior college baseball team in 2010, I believe it was. Howard College won 57-0. They were in the Western Junior College Athletic Conference, which is the conference that I coached in while I was at New Mexico Military Institute. They ended up going 63-1. They did not lose a game until they made it through the winner's bracket of the region tournament. Lost. They would have had to have been beaten twice.
Mm-hmm.
They lost the first game and won the second game, and then went through the Junior College World Series undefeated and won a national championship. Those types of teams, you can just tell. And
Yeah.
the Golden State Warriors are in that category right now.
But I don't know how many of you stayed up till 10 minutes after midnight Central Time. So if you're on the East Coast,
Not
East
me.
Coast, it was even later. But the Warriors easily could have lost that game last night. Steph Curry didn't play because he twisted his ankle a couple nights ago against Oklahoma City, and Andre Iguodala didn't play because he was nursing a sore hamstring. So they rested both of them, and they still found a way to win. Atlanta, I was watching the game on Fox Sports Net Southeast, so it was the Hawks broadcast. So, they're pretty much homers rooting for the Hawks, and the Hawks fought. They came back. Golden State had a 14-point lead early in the fourth quarter, and Atlanta came back and number 4 for Atlanta. What the heck's his name? Millsap. Millsap had a shot. Had a wide open 3-pointer with about 2 seconds to go that kind of hit both sides of the rim and came out. And then Golden State got the rebound called time, and Klay Thompson had a shot right at the buzzer that they looked like almost the same shot. Hit rim out, both of them. So, Golden State could have easily lost that game in regulation. They could have easily won it in regulation. But, the great teams, even when they don't play great, Thompson was like 6 for 24 from the field going into overtime. And then he made a couple key baskets in overtime. But that's one of the things that the great teams do is even when they don't play well, find a way to win. Personally, I was a Miami Dolphins season ticket holder in the undefeated season, but I rooted very hard for the Patriots a few years ago and for the Carolina Panthers this year. I just like to see kind of what you were talking about. See those great teams do those great things. And I rooted for Kentucky last year. I know Ben didn't.
I've got my Indiana Hoosiers.
He's got the '76 Indiana team, the last team to go undefeated in the NCAA. And Ben and I have talked about this, but I actually got to see them play twice that year. One of the things in the Warriors' favor down the stretch is they've already had the bulk of their road games. They had a 7-game road trip in which they went 6-1. They had a 6-game road trip. I think a lot of people were a little skeptical. The first game out of the break, the Trailblazers just hammered them, beat them by 30 points, and everybody said, well, but then they won the last 5 games of that road trip against some really good competition. So here we sit at 54-5, and 16 of their final 23 games are at home, which should help them a little bit, considering that right now they're 25-0 at home this year. Last night was their 43rd consecutive home victory, and the ironic thing about that record is that the Bulls have the record at 44, and the Bulls did it at the end of the 94-95 season, and then, of course, the 95-96 season when they won 72 games. And ironically, the last home loss for Golden State was on January 27th, 2015 to the Bulls, 113-111 in overtime. And Steve Kerr, the coach of the Warriors, who was the 6th man on that Bulls team, since he became the coach, Golden State is 63-2 at home. We were looking at some stats. Ben and I were looking at some stats this morning, and Steve Kerr in that 95-96 season played all 82 games. You know how they have the category games played, games started 0. So he never started a game, but yet he was 5th in minutes played. And Andre Iguodala has kind of taken that role with Golden State. Iguodala is an Olympic gold medalist. He was one of the 12 best players in America that year. Played with Kobe and LeBron and Kevin Durant and those guys. And he has just been a complete pro and assumed that role of 6th man. He didn't start a game last year, I don't believe, until Game 3 of the NBA Finals when they moved him into the starting lineup, and he ended up being the Finals MVP. So that's the kind of sacrifices that the great players have to make for a team to be doing what they're doing. And I think that they've all embraced that. Steph Curry, we're going to talk about him specifically in a little bit, but there's all kinds of people starting to say now that he's the greatest shooter ever. Magic Johnson very clearly stated that the other night after he made that 3-pointer to beat Oklahoma City in a tweet. But Curry even is enough of a team guy that when Klay Thompson gets hot, Curry just gives him the ball. And Klay Thompson can get scorching hot. 37 points in one quarter last year. And sometimes I think when Klay Thompson gets hot, he actually gets hotter than Curry does, because he just starts hitting from everywhere. According to the Basketball Power Index, Golden State is favored, will be favored in 21 of their last 23 games. And the only games where they won't be favored are at San Antonio on March 19th and April 10th. Ben and I talked about this when they were like 23-0. They had a thing on ESPN when before Golden State had lost a game, had not lost a game. And they said the first time they were going to be underdog was the March 19th game. Remember we talked about that about a month or 2 months ago. So only 2 games the entire season that they're going to be the underdogs.
But that makes sense because San Antonio is undefeated at home as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both running the table on their home courts.
They're both undefeated, and San Diego's a couple games behind. So if Golden State slips up and loses a home game, and the interesting thing about Golden State is the teams they've lost to this year, none of them have been what you would call the elite of the National Basketball Association. You know, they lost to Milwaukee, they lost to Portland.
Philly, I believe.
I don't think they lost to Philly. Philly's
It was a close game.
Yeah.
They had lost it.
Philly's record looks a lot like the mirror image of the Golden State's record. What I say on TV the other night, they had a stat that at the current pace, Philadelphia's lost 52 games, and at their current pace, it would take like 9 years for the Warriors to lose that many games, and by the time they got there, they'd be 500 games over 500, which is kind of crazy. But you know, the other interesting thing when they showed that stat about the RPI, the power or BPI, Basketball Power Index, with the 2 games in San Antonio, they also had San Antonio and Golden State as the exact same percentage to win the title. So even though Golden State's out there, San Antonio, and when you look at the Basketball Power Index, has just as good a chance right now to win the championship as Golden State does. So that could be interesting down the stretch. Ben mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there's a stretch from April 7th to April 10th. On April 7th, Golden State plays the Spurs in Oakland, and then they go on the road for a back-to-back on April 9th at Memphis, April 10th at San Antonio. So in 3 days, they play the Spurs twice, and that's after the second Spurs game, there's only one more game. So like Ben said, right at the end of the season, that's a tough 3-game stretch. So they probably need to be at 70 before they embark on that 3-game stretch. You know, there's been a lot of talk by a lot of people. You can find all kinds of articles if you Google it online about who's better, the 95-96 Bulls or the 2015-2016 Golden State Warriors. One of the things that I think is fascinating is the youth of the Warriors. Even somebody asked Steve Kerr, who of course was the 6th man on that great Bulls team and is the current coach, asked him, and he said that right now the Bulls are better because at that point they were the established NBA dominant team. I don't know, a dynasty if you want to call it that. I think they qualified as a dynasty. But and in Kerr's words, the Golden State Warriors haven't got there yet, but they could. And Ben and I looked at the ages. The top 4 players in minutes played that year for the Bulls were Michael Jordan, who was 32, Scottie Pippen, who was 30, Dennis Rodman, who was 34, and Ron Harper, who was 32. At the same time, the top 4 players in minutes played up till today for the Warriors, Steph Curry's only 27, Klay Thompson's 26, Harrison Barnes is 23, and Draymond Green is 25. So about 5 years per person younger across the board. So, you know, this Golden State is kind of scary, but this team could actually get better.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Well, plus with free agency and all the things that go on now, you know, in trades and all that kind of thing, if they stay together, yeah.
Yeah, and there's some serious talk that Kevin Durant could be a Warrior next year.
That would be scary.
Yeah,
That
that would be very
Add
scary.
him to that mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the decision for him is do you want to be the man and make more money, or do you want to have an opportunity to
Win the
win a
championship.
championship?
There may not be enough money.
Well, the
Sacramento.
salary cap's going up like 20 million
It's going up significantly.
They're what on the salaries? They're like 4th or 5th right now.
Yeah,
You know, the Cavs are number 1.
they're in good shape. They're in good shape salary cap wise. Plus, they got some big numbers in there like Andrew Bogut that I'm sure that they wouldn't mind if they had to get rid of. We like it. We like the way he plays, You know, he's one of those guys that can score 0 points and be a factor.
Mhm.
But I'm sure if they needed to move him to make way for Kevin Durant, they'd probably,
Well, they moved David Lee from last year's team.
yeah.
He was significant the same way Bogut was, where he didn't have to score a point and made a big contribution. He's gone this year, and it's almost like you don't even remember that he was on that team. They filled that slot very easily.
Yeah. One of the things that Michael Jordan in that Magic year averaged 30.4 points per game, and Steph Curry this year is averaging 30.7. So again, there are a lot of similarities between the two teams. A lot of similarities. Hopefully everybody watched the game on ABC Saturday night when they played the Oklahoma City, and because Steph Curry was just phenomenal. And if you didn't get a chance to see the game, go Google it and sorry, look at all the tweets that some of the great players are putting up after the game.
Yeah.
That's what Magic said. He's clearly the greatest shooter of all time, and even LeBron. And one of the players, I can't remember who, I think it might have been Lillard from Portland, said, "This guy's not even human." But his performance that night was phenomenal.
Well, the thing is, he's not just making threes from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
He's like 2 steps into their side of the court, and he's making
He's
threes.
launching up three.
Yeah.
But, you know, Curry's having a phenomenal season. I think the back-to-back MVPs is a done deal.
Mhm.
I can't see any way he doesn't win the MVP.
But you know, from a coaching standpoint, the scary thing about that is kids think they can emulate that.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary.
But I think one of the reasons why Steph Curry is so popular is because kids have a better chance of emulating that than you're right. They don't have a chance of emulating that, but in their mind, they have a better chance of emulating that than they do a 360 windmill behind the
I agree.
dunk because you
But
know,
from a coaching standpoint, you'd be pulling your hair out if you had any.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
absolutely.
mean, that's why I always kept mine short while I was coaching. Anyway.
the last thing I want to point out is that on Steph Curry's current pace, he'll make right around 400 3-pointers this year. And I read this one article that said going from the old record, which was 282, he just broke it. He just broke it Saturday night.
Yeah.
He broke the single season record with 24 games to go. But for putting things in perspective, if Steph Curry gets his 400 3-pointers, that's a 40% increase over the previous record. And for a little bit of perspective, that would be the same as a Major League Baseball player hitting 102 home runs or getting 367 hits, or an NHL player, somebody like Alex Ovechkin scoring 129 goals, or somebody throwing 77 touchdown passes, or a wide receiver catching 200 passes, or a running back rushing for almost 3,000 yards. That's how far out there he's putting that record. I think it's going to be interesting to see. You know, I think it's important that they be within one of the record when they start that April 7th,
Yeah.
7th, 9th, and 10th 3-game stretch there against when they play the Spurs twice with the Grizzlies in between. And the Grizzlies are no pushover
No.
in Memphis. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I personally think that you know, we didn't mention this, but they clinched the playoff berth in February, which hasn't been done since I think the '86 Lakers were the last team to actually clinch a playoff berth in February. Hopefully they'll go for the record. I think that the Colts screwed up a few years ago when they didn't try to go undefeated in the NFL. I think when you have a season like this, you take it for all it's worth.
Mhm.
And I heard one of the analysts talk about the other day, should they rest their players? Hal Curry and Thompson before Saturday night's game were averaging 8 points combined in the fourth quarter. So they're not playing a lot of fourth quarters.
Yeah.
So they're getting plenty of rest because of the blowouts. But it'll be interesting to see. We'll probably get back together and talk about the NBA one more time before the playoffs. Kind of make our playoff predictions and getting ready the conference tournaments and the NCAA get ready to go. And they're actually playing baseball now. I saw a game between the Reds and somebody on TV last night. So baseball season's ready to go, and this is a great time to be a sports fan. NASCAR's had their first 2 races, and this is like the greatest time of the year to be a sports fan. Spring practice started in South Alabama, Auburn, and Alabama. So
Daylight savings time right around the corner.
like until 8 o'clock at night. Anyway, we hope everybody has a great week in sports. We'll be here next Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Central Time, and every time you guys want to have something, want us to talk about something, just fire us an email, and we'll see we can find somebody to talk about it. Anyway, have a great week in sports, and we'll see you next week.